Salutations, ladies and gentlemen. The Knife Raven here, back again with another video. And in today's video, I am very excited to share with you this Böker knife. Now, Böker of Solingen is a very well-known brand, and in fact, I just reviewed this knife, the Gents Lockback, very recently. Depending on when this video comes out, that could be either earlier today or yesterday. That entirely depends. But in the meantime, that knife was very, very positive. I really liked that knife. However, this knife is on a completely different level, and I am absolutely giddy to talk about it. So let me move my Christmas mug out of the way, as we are starting to phase out of that season, unfortunately. But my goodness, this knife, where do I even start? Well, I'll start by saying, here's the box. This is probably Böker's nicest box I've ever seen. Of course, they have the old, simple cardboard box here. They have the slightly nicer modern box, like this one. Remember, opens like this. And then, of course, we have this, which I believe is reserved for Böker's nicest and most premium knives, which is interesting considering that last box I just showcased was of a limited edition, whereas this is not. I promise not to take too long on the packaging, but aside from the box, you have this very nice zip-up case with the Böker logo. Simply unzip it. Inside you have your warranty cards in English and Deutsch. And inside this little pocket right here, you have some wax paper with the Böker emblem all over it. And upon unwrapping this, you will see your knife. Now, you might be wondering why this knife is so special. And I'm sure some of my older viewers recognize a knife like this. In fact, I reviewed one before. A Böker Barlow in bog oak, and C75 carbon steel. However, there's something about this one that strikes me as simply traditional and classic in every possible way. And this is Böker's basic Barlow. Now, by basic, I do not mean cheap or inexpensive. I simply mean this is their gateway Barlow, if you will. If you want something modern, they have the Expedition series with the micarta. If you want something a bit skinnier with the teardrop shape, you, of course, will have the Barlow Prime. And if you want something very, very fancy, you could go with the Schlossberg, the bog oak lineup, or one of their Damascus series knives, such as the Leopard or the Tirpitz. But as a simple Barlow, this fills in everything you could possibly want with a traditional old-style Barlow. And I am absolutely smitten with this. Truly, this Barlow is lovely. I got this at Kent of Inglewood. Amazing, amazing store. I've bought from them many times, and I highly recommend that if you're looking for a knife such as this, or, well, any Opinel or Thierry Zard or Higo, you should check them out. They have a very nice selection. They also have a lot of Helles and Gromans and such like. But we're not talking about those brands. We are talking about this. So, of course, you want me to start by describing the fit and finish, as that's probably what you're here for. So, that's what I shall do. The transitions are seamless between the bolsters and the handles. The pins are incredibly smooth. You cannot feel even the slightest bit of transition. And the shield, despite having a bit of texturing when you feel it, that is, it isn't sticking up above the handle scale more than it should, and is overall just very well executed. I know some people don't like shields on their knives, but I personally have always been a big fan of Böker's tree brand logo. The blade centering is pretty much perfect. Maybe there's a bit of it leaning to the right, but I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe just a little bit, but aside from that, I'd deem that perfect. Aside from that, it's seamless on the back. Again, no gapping whatsoever. Absolutely perfect, seamless transitions from the liners to the spring to the handle. The blade has a French nail nick. As some of you may know, that is the long, thin nail nick, as opposed to the more traditional simple groove, such as this on a Eyewitness Barlow. But the French nail nick, very nice, very small. It's not as much of a eyesore as some larger nail nicks can be. At least that's just my personal opinion. The blade opens with a very strong pull, startlingly at that. And one thing that immediately caught my eye with this knife was in the half-stop position, the spring does not sit proud of the liner, which is incredibly rare. In fact, I have a couple other knives here to compare that to that have half-stops, and these are some of the better ones for that. For example, here's the Eyewitness Barlow. This spring sits too low, which is, again, not very common. Here's the Premier version of that very same knife. Again, spring sits low, not even. And here is an old Sabre Japan Barlow, which is the only Barlow I have aside from this Böker, that has an absolutely perfect flat spring that is not proud. Again, this is a bit of a old knife. It's going to need a clean up, of course, but you can see that that is a very smooth transition. So that's immediately something that caught my eye. In its open position, the knife has very, very smooth spring. It's not proud. No blade play at all. Absolutely perfect. The blade is made of 440C, which in days of yore used to be considered the best steel in the world. And while a lot of people will say it's bad now because M390 exists and a whole bunch of other steels that have names that I always forget, 440C is still just as reliable today as it was all those years ago when it was deemed perhaps the best steel for knives. It has a very nice mirror polish. You can see the rather old lights above me. Very, 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 very shiny. Quite truly a hand mirror. The bolsters are finished with a half satin, almost mirror polish. They are made of nickel silver, along with the pins. Back spring is stainless steel, and the liners are made of some brass. And you know I like brass on knives. So aside from that, the handle scales, which are absolutely gorgeous, these are manufactured using grenadille, or grenadilla, which is called African Blackwood to most. And it is not ebony, but it has a similarity to it. It's a very dark wood with a very close grain pattern. Takes a very high polish. And because of that high polish, you have to be careful not to scratch it, because then you'll need to polish it again. So it's pretty much the opposite of the coarse, rough, and hard to polish oak. But both are beautiful in their own way. Since we have this knife here, here it is next to a Böker Stockman. So you can see the Barlow is a fair bit smaller than the Stockman. This knife has a carbon steel clip point blade, whereas the Barlow features a stainless steel clip point blade, traditional with that of the Barlow pattern. So you can see there's a very noticeable size difference here. And despite being made by the same manufacturer, there are a lot of differences. You have long bolster versus 2 short bolsters, mirror polish versus acid wash, carbon versus stainless, half stop versus no half stop, limited edition versus not limited edition. These knives are rather different despite being made from the same company, and I love them both equally. Now, how is the overall use factor of this knife? Again, the blade is absolutely razor sharp. I've already used it a little bit, and it hasn't dulled whatsoever. The edge is rather thin, and I forget the exact angle you'd want to sharpen this for. It's really up to what kind of edges you prefer, but I believe the angle that Böker uses is somewhere between a 15 and 20 degree angle, although do not quote me on that. I'm not an expert in sharpening in any way. Again, very ergonomic design. The Barlow has stood the test of time as being a very simple and comfortable handle to hold on to. There's a bit of a unsharpened bit under the blade, which gives you a bit of a nice 4-finger grip. And the tip is very, very sharp, as you would expect with a clip point. Now, aside from the fact that this knife is amazing fit and finish wise and is just a simply functional and beautiful piece, how legal is this knife? And again, I've said it before, consult your local law offices, your local representatives. Please do not refer to me for legal advice in any way, shape, or form. But I do know that blades that are non-locking with, knives that are non-locking with less than 3-inch blades are legal in the UK. And so far, the closed length of this knife is just a little over 3 1/4 inches. The overall length is about just a hair under 6 inches. The blade length, including the unsharpened bit, is a little over 2.5. And just the sharpened section of the blade, you're looking at about 2 1/4 inches. So this is absolutely UK legal, no matter which way you measure this, whether you want to measure the full unsharpened bit or just the sharpened bit. This is UK legal, no matter what measuring tape that you're using. This will always be a UK legal knife. And again, laws can change, they can have exceptions, whatever, but in every other sense, this is a UK legal knife. And I'm saying this because I know I have quite a few people who watch my channel from the UK. So again, always check on your own just to be sure, but yes, this knife is perfectly legal in almost anywhere that will allow a folding knife, as long as the blade is non-locking and has a short blade. Now, aside from the ease of carry almost anywhere, the simplicity and the unrivaled beauty for, well, its simplicity, I decided that because this knife was a bit of a special one for me, I decided I'm going to bring out a few other Barlows. And I know the Barlow, some people love it, some people hate it, and a lot of people are kind of somewhere in the middle. I am far closer to the former. I love Barlows, and may not be my #1 favorite pattern, but I would certainly collect them if I could. And I have got a little bit of a collection here. So I thought I'd just showcase this. I may make a full collection video in the future, but in the meantime, here's the Böker Barlow next to the Taylor's Eyewitness basic Barlow. This is their budget model with a plain satin finished stainless steel clip blade. Of course, next to my brand new Böker. And I don't have my bog oak handled Böker Barlow here, unfortunately, which is sad, as that would have been a very good comparison. Here it is next to the Eyewitness Premier Barlow. Let me just line these all up. So these two knives are exactly the same, except this one is far nicer finished. It's more polished and has little extra embellishments. It's just overall a fancier knife. Here is the Böker Barlow next to another German Barlow. This one is from the brand German Bull, and this is the Razor Barlow. And I figured, until I make a full video, I'll just leave it off with the Saber Japan Budget Barlow. This was my very first Barlow knife that I found at a local antique store. And I'll give you the view from above, and you can see these are all very similar despite having obvious differences. You can see that the Böker is perhaps the slimmest, I would say, among the Barlows, whereas the Sheffield Barlows certainly have a different shape, more of a curvature in the handle. The German Bull is the closest in resemblance to a case knife, and again, the case knives, the Barlows that they used to produce, had the big stamp that said Barlow. They had the very square-like handle and bolster. And of course, the Saber is a lot closer to what I picture an old-timer or an old Schrade to be like. But which is my favorite? That's very hard to tell. In the meantime, I think I'm actually liking the Böker the most. Its slimness and simplicity is just unrivaled. But yeah, there's just a little short collection, well, partial collection of the Barlows that I've acquired over my, short period of time collecting knives as a whole. But no, my overall thoughts on this knife, I can't really put them into words. Something about the simplicity of this knife, and don't get me wrong, I adore the bog oak version, but there's something about having a knife with a 5,000-year-old handle that just, it makes you feel like you're carrying a piece of high-value jewelry that you don't want to use because you might drop it or scratch it. There's something about that I'm just not a huge fan of. That's why I almost never carry my Eyewitness Premier Barlow. I mean, if you'll look at this, this could be used for cutting tasks, but to me, this is man jewelry. I acknowledge it. I accept it. And in fact, today I wanted to carry this knife, but I decided to opt against it, and I found the rational solution, which was to simply carry the basic version with a simpler finish and more of a workhorse aesthetic as opposed to a high-value piece of art, which is what this is closer to. But no, this Böker Barlow here kind of comes in between those two knives I just showcased. It's tough enough to be a working knife that you can carry with you every day, but it has enough undeniable class to it to be classified as your signature prestige folder or gentleman's folder, which it does incredibly well. And the price I paid for this was not as bad as I was expecting. I did have a bit of a discount at Kent of Inglewood because, well, frequent shoppers do get some discounts from them, but this knife was cheaper than the other Böker Barlow that I bought in the past, and it was, I believe, a fair bit cheaper than this one. But all in all, no, I am just incredibly pleased with this. The quality is absolutely amazing. This knife is, I hate throwing around this term because it is so commonly used. This knife is GEC quality. I know, I keep saying I want to quit using that term because as much as GEC is an amazing brand and they make amazing stuff, it's become slowly the gold standard for cutlery, despite only being around for, a couple decades, whereas something like Böker, they have history going back 300 years, and they have always been making good knives. If anything, I think they're getting better. So I think we might have to rethink the gold standard name for traditional pocket knives that are made with almost perfect quality every time. Because I have a fair bit of knives, and a couple of them are Bökers, and for example, this one, the Stockman that I showed earlier, or even my newly acquired gent's knife, they're flawless. I can't find a flaw with them if I try. And the closest thing that this Barlow has to a flaw is, again, that centering. There's an ever so slight bit of off-center. Yeah, look at that. That is almost non-existent. And I'm trying to find a flaw. I had to look to find that. Most knives have flaws that you can see almost instantly. I mean, if I take this German bull here, I just take one look at the back. All right, fair, no issues with the back. I open the blade and there's a bit of blade play. Or I open up the secondary blade. Oh, look, there's also blade play. Oh, and there's a gap. See, most knives, it doesn't take much to find flaws. With this, I had to hunt to find an issue with this knife. So yes, I am being petty. I have no reason to be complaining about that slight bit of offset blade. But truly, this knife, like even how straight the blade is, it does seem like there's a bit of a curvature here, but I believe that is just the sharpening grind and how it goes from the unsharpened bit of the knife to the sharpened edge. But again, that blade is really, really nice. That's very straight compared to a lot of knives that unfortunately have had very off blades in the past. But Böker is slowly becoming one of my absolute favorite brands, and it probably doesn't help that I've had some negative experiences with other brands that would otherwise be close to the top of my list, or it also doesn't probably help that I'm trying to learn German, and the more I'm learning German, the more German knives I seem to be buying. But as much as I believe that Ottermesser is an amazing little small company because they don't have as big of a factory or as big of an influence as Böker, I still think that Böker produces the best knives in Germany that I've seen so far, unless I can find something from Robert Kloss or Friedrich Hartkopf. So far, Böker's and their Solingen line, they're absolutely stunning. So just these three knives alone, completely different. Some are slip joints, one's a lockback, half stops, no half stops, stainless carbon, different handle materials. These are so different, but yet they all share the same undeniable quality. And I don't know. It's hard for me to find a brand that really can have that same level of wow factor almost every single time. Now, granted, Böker, I do have a Congress from Böker that I believe was made in China, and that one, I can't say I'm as impressed with it. But from their line that's actually made in Germany, these are amazing knives. So I'm sorry I've rambled on again, which all my videos tend to divulge into, but as for this knife, 10 out of 10. Quality, style, materials, everything. Even the packaging. I mean, you get your own little zip-up pouch for this. This is just, the quality is undeniable. I love this knife, and I really highly encourage you to check it out. Thank you so much for watching if you've made it this far. Thank you for hearing my ramble. I appreciate it. And thank you very much for watching. This has been the Böker tree brand Barlow in African Blackwood. And this is the Streaming Enderman, or pardon me, the Knife Raven. Haven't done that in a while. The Knife Raven, as always, signing off. Goodbye.